Everyone shows up for the pledge. The pledge.
All set. Good evening. I call to order the budget work session number 2 for the town council. The date is March 5th. The time is 6:40. And if we could please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which I stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was a big mistake.
Thank you. Tonight, our agenda includes account 1110, the Recreation Department, the Peacedale Office Building, the Neighborhood Guild, and the Senior Services Funds. And then we'll move on to account 0910, which is the Public Works Administration, to account 0970, which is the wastewater transfer, water, wastewater, and solid waste funds. So this is the second night of the budget process, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Alfred. Thank you.
What an exciting agenda. As we get started, I would suggest that you go on, the narrative is on page N37, and with the numbers is, the page number will be page GF20. I've also given each of the council members a copy of the handout tonight so that you don't need to take anything out of the ring binders. You can just use the number detail that you've got with the handout for this evening to hopefully make this a little bit easier. In starting out with the recreation program, the recreation program is really made up of several elements. Those elements include a budget specifically for the administrative component of the recreation department. Second element would be for the maintenance division. Third would look at athletic programs. Fourth, aquatics programs, which includes our beach. Leisure services, creative activities, and finally, celebrations, which is the requirement of $3,500 that's appropriated each year for each of the 2 parades that are conducted in the community. The overall budget request for the recreation overall program is $1,397,000. It's about $31,000 over the current year. The recreation program runs a number of programs on a fee basis. Those programs create revenue to offset the cost of running the recreation programs. In fact, we're looking at revenues of approximately $665,800 next year, $22,000 more in the current year. The property tax supports are only up about $9,000 to $732,000. It's important to note that there is also recreational programs that are conducted through the Neighborhood Guild. The Neighborhood Guild is run as a separate enterprise fund and has no tax dollars associated with it. So the only programs that have any type of tax support associated is through the recreation programs on the 7 divisions that I've just mentioned. In summary, we maintain 17 parks or recreation properties throughout the community. Our maintenance division consists of 6 full-time and 3 seasonal employees. When we look at the programs that are administered, if we look at such as the Leisure Services program, Leisure Services has probably 10 different components that run from the concerts that are held during the summer months, the 4th of July celebration, classes that are offered, the summer camps that are provided for the for a student population, Easter celebrations, pumpkin celebrations, Earth Day, the operation of the Nature Center. So all of those programs are part of leisure services. When we look at the athletics program, we run sports camps, skateboard camps, tennis camps, basketball, both instructional, youth, travel teams, summer basketball, volleyball, drop-in ball, 35 and over basketball for men, and softball. So the point that I'm raising is that there are a number of various programs, each of them on a fee basis that people participate. I think one of the most important things in the budget message this year talks about the number of students that are participating in the basketball program. And on page N37 at the bottom of the page, we talk about the indoor athletic program demands and that indoor sports gym space is inadequate at this point. It's important to note that in the last year, we had over 723 children between the ages of 5 and 18 that participated in the basketball leagues. During that same time period, however, we also had gym requirements that were associated with volleyball and adult basketball that was also making use of that space. So again, it goes back to the capital improvement program and the need for us to consider the future development of the community center that we have talked about probably for the last 10 years. With that as a general introduction, I'd ask Terry if she wants to walk the council through the different programs and some of the unique characteristics that the programs offer in the town. I think this is a department that you can be well proud of, both from an administrative perspective and in terms of dealing with the maintenance functions on the parks. Certainly the maintenance is going to take us a lot more time in terms of cleaning up the parks after that last storm that we had. In fact, we'll be bringing back the seasonal work earlier this year than had been anticipated because we're going to need the extra assistance to get those parks ready for summer use. So with that, Terry, you want to walk through some?
Good evening.
Hello.
Just a couple of highlights that I'd like to point out with this particular budget. And it's probably easiest if we follow first some of the challenges on N38. You'll see that, as Steve mentioned, we have an increase in total expenditures for the budget of $31,219. This is quite lean in that it represents just about a 2% increase. We anticipate that we will have increases in obviously our personnel costs are the major factor in all of our cost centers for this increase. We do have a few other items that I'd like to point out in the budget. First, with the administration budget, 1110, we do have a couple of points to make. We actually have a decrease in our telephone line item that represents 50% of the data line cost, which is applied, it's shared between the Guild and the town budget. We've reduced that line to apply half of it to the Guild budget, which was not done in the previous year. We've also reduced our website development line by $200, and our professional services line has increased by $800. We will be seeing an increase in that line because of the addition of our online registration software module, which will be an addition to our new software package, which we're implementing at this time. Under our park maintenance department, 1111, you'll also see that the majority of our increases are due to personnel costs. However, we do show increases in ag supplies, custodial materials, and science and striping, just based on increases in materials fees. In the athletics, 1112 account, we show an increase in personnel, and again, also I'd point out that we show a 5.6% increase in professional services. That increase is related to our hiring of independent contractors for athletic camps, which is one area that has really seen an increase over the past few years. We hire an outside contractor to come in, and they do a variety of camps. This is separate and apart from our Discovery Camp, which is run by our staff in-house. We've had lacrosse, we've had volleyball, we've had field hockey, football, you name it. During the course of the summer, there are any number of camps being run out of the various play fields, Tuckertown and Curtis Corner and Broad Rock. We anticipate that to be a very active program again this year.
I think it's important to make sure people are aware that what we're placing together is a budget based on specific number of participants in different programs. If we do not get that participation, then we wouldn't spend the dollars as far as the instructors are concerned, and obviously we wouldn't take the revenue in. So the budget is constructed based on utilization of specific programs with specific number of people participating. Conversely, if we had a program where we thought we would have 30 participants and we ended up with 60 participants, so we had 2 divisions, we may actually overspend that account as long as the revenue was there to balance off. When you look at some of the explanation that's provided in the narrative, you'll see some of the programs we anticipated conducting, we did not conduct because there was not enough interest in those programs. So understand this is a fluid program in terms of we're offering the service. If people want that service, they're willing to pay for it, then we will contract with the independent contractor to provide the services. If they're not willing to participate in the program, we don't have any interest, then that vendor would not be secured and the services costs would not be incurred.
And I would add that you'll see that in the Guild programming, when we get to that budget, that there's a decrease, and we'll go into some of the programming explanations on that. The aquatics budget, which is account 1113, you'll also notice, this is an example of what Steve was just talking about, an increase in our professional services line item by $5,600. We have an immensely popular surf camp that runs at the beach. We did very well this past summer, and we base our projections on the activity that we experienced this past summer. That's what that is attributed to. We also show personnel increases as well in aquatics. Of course, that's quite weather dependent, the entire beach budget, and dependent on if we have sand on the beach. The leisure services budget, 1114. You'll notice some decreases in seasonal salaries by 4.3%. We have restructured our nature center program and reduced the number of hours required of our coordinator, and that's the majority of that is attributed to that reduction. We've also had a reduction in our rental line item. We've been able to hold the line on our busing costs. We've gone out to bid the past couple of years and have secured the same pricing as a school department busing, which has been extremely helpful. In the creative activities stepping stone account, 1116, you'll notice that there is also an adjustment in the amount of 6.2% to our part-time salary line item. This is an adjustment to our personnel costs for the teachers and assistant teachers at Stepping Stone Preschool. We actually had an adjustment to the number of school days that they actually work, along with the number of administrative days for that program, so that's an adjustment there. We've also added an additional $1,700 in the building improvements line item. We do have some repairs necessary to the roof of the school, so that will be within the 13-14 year. The other things that are also included in that creative activities account are community education programs like the Safety First program. Those are also part of, it's not just the preschool, those are included as well, summertime programs and vacation programs. The other thing I would note in the Stepping Stone school category is that we are at capacity this year. Last year we were not quite there in the afternoon programming, but this year we are at capacity. That's, Steve, you want to talk about revenues? You want me to go right into, does anybody
Excuse me,
have?
Carol has a question.
Terry, what is the capacity at Stepping Stone?
20 students, Kathy? 20. We have a morning and afternoon program.
Terry, all the seasonal salary figures are in here. Can you tell me what that means for the amount of kids that are hired? Just what number of seasonal employees? Can you give me a number?
Well, we have a variety of seasonal employees for Discovery Camp programs, also for our beach program. If,
I mean, 50, 100, 150?
oh, I would say 100 easily, depending on what program you're talking about, because we hire probably 25 staff people just for Discovery Camp, another 25 for the aquatics program. We hire seasonals for park maintenance.
Where do you find the kids? From the high school, or do you?
We advertise. We generally will receive applications from high school students, local students. We like to be able to consider local applicants first.
It's good to hear. All right. Yeah, I just didn't know if you groomed some kids from the high school or
We,
early college.
typically, we'll get, that's the biggest applicant pool is the high school kids, particularly for the summer camp program.
Terry, I just have to follow up to Jim's question. And I'm not sure if this is true or not, but is it also that if they're hired for one seasonal summer, that we call them back for the next summer if they're interested?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
We perform performance evaluations on all of our seasonal employees. They have to reapply, and typically we have great luck with our employees, but it's not definite that anyone who's hired in a previous season is automatically rehired.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, do they, excuse me, do they have to, are they, is there, because I have some experience in this, are they invited back if they're good employees, or do they have to apply?
They would be invited, if they're good employees, they would be, the recommendation is made through the administration to rehire.
Okay, okay. And if they're not, they can still give it a shot.
Correct. Welcome.
Thank you.
Carol? Terry, are a lot of these programs self-sustaining, like the camp programs, or does it require additional dollars from the town?
Most of the programs, we strive to have them be self-sustaining, and in some of the detail, you can see which programs are and which are not. The community-based programs through the Leisure Services Cost Center, many of those, such as the 4th of July, some of our free programs, like the concert programs, we rely on sponsorship dollars, and those are not self-sustaining, but we make every effort to try to pull in alternative revenues in order to support those. The camps are self-sustaining. Discovery Camp generally runs at a modest profit. So yes.
And the objective that we usually have with the Recreation Commission is to attempt to make sure that adult programs are going to be self-sustaining, and that if there's discounting that's necessary, it would be with the youth programs themselves.
One more question. How about the new baseball team, Waves? Is that included in the budget anywhere where they're going to, aren't they going to rent Old Mountain Field?
They are. That arrangement actually was solidified after my budget was presented. However, that will be projected as revenue for park rental.
And so that's been, you've come to a figure on that? Can you tell us what that is?
Off the top of my head, it's, don't quote me on this, $3,800 in that vicinity, with also some sponsorship dollars coming from the Waves in order to support Old Mountain Field programming such as 4th of July, Children's Fest, and the Easter egg hunts.
Are there other questions as far as the recreation program is concerned? If there's not, we'll move on to Peacedale Office Building.
We're good.
Okay, the Peacedale Office Building's got its own tab for PDOB 1. As noted in the narrative, the town purchased Peacedale Office Building back in 1983. So we're coming on our 30th anniversary as far as being the owner of that facility. And also, we have made extensive improvements in that building over the term of our ownership. At this point, we have 9 rental units within the facility, and the rental units provide most of the income for the program. In fact, next year, if you look at page PDOB 3, you'll see that the revenue stream is $82,710 coming in from the rental units, and self-supporting activities are programs that are run, such as the yoga classes that are run through the PDOB building, generate about $13,300. You'll also see that the fund balance, the monies that are generated from this stay with the Peacedale Office Building Fund. So we started out the year with about $255,000, and we're expecting that we'll have a fund balance of around $260,000 by the time we close the year, because our expense statement is showing in the current year an estimated surplus of about $8,000. And for the 13-14 year, we're looking at about a $5,300 level. For the most part, the building is just being used for business purposes at this point. One of the problems that we have in using the building for recreational programming is accessibility issues. There is no elevator in the building. The reserve funds that we're setting aside will provide us with an opportunity at a future time to be able to install an elevator. The problem with the elevator installation is, because we're talking about a historical building, adding an elevator will be difficult at best, and it would also mean that we would have to most likely lose some of the rental space to be able to provide a corridor access to the elevator if it was located off the backside of the building. But it's something that is still being looked at. So we continue to operate that facility. It is not costing the town any money to maintain and preserve that building, and we're able to also be able to provide enhancements. When we bought the building back in 1983, what the assumption was at that time is that as programming continued to expand at the Guild, that possibly that building would be used as a music center, or it would be used for some passive activity that would complement or at least be able to work in conjunction with the rented commercial space, because it was always assumed that we would need some of the space in commercial rent as a means of being able to run the facility and not have to take tax dollars in. Part of the agreement in 1983 when we purchased the property was to provide a lease to the Museum of Primitive Culture at a no rent value for the main gallery in perpetuity, and the town agreed to do that. Subsequent to that, as the needs of that group have expanded, they have leased additional space from us that is on a fee basis, granted a discounted fee basis, but on a fee basis. Glad to answer any questions council has on the Peacedale office building program.
Any questions? Good.
If not, we'll move on to the tab for the Guild. I think everybody's familiar with the Guild 25,000 square foot facility. Serves as a principal location for classroom, music rooms, and different studio activities, whether it's for pottery or kitchen activities. There's also the locker room and the fitness center. Last year, we conducted over 400 different classes, both with the arts and community education, sports, fitness, within the Guild proper. We're looking at a program budget as identified on page NG4 of an operation budget of $450,964. You'll see that the debt service is listed at $55,000 in addition to that. That's for a bond that was issued back in 1996. That bond will be fully paid off in the 15-16 year, which would coincide with the first year payments that we'll be looking at on a Nedler bond that's part of the capital improvement program for $1 million. That would be for further enhancements and improvements within the Guild facility itself. The Guild also breaks out its programs based on the type of activities, as you'll see on NG5. The front desk operation is really to be able to pay for the cost of having a front desk operation and persons that are really in charge of building management during the evening hours as well as dealing with the public during the daytime hours. The senior programs, the principal senior programs is really the scheduling of trips to various locations, whether it's Boston, New York, or to different sites of interest. That's fully paid for through the participants within that program. There's also a part-time salary, which is for the person that coordinates those activities. On the youth programs, music programs, adult programs, and art programs, those are all of the different activities that go on in the Guild during day and nighttime hours. Each, or most of those are conducted with independent contractors, so that they're not town employees, and what we do is we share the value of the program. So if, I believe that the share is an 80-20 split on what the cost is to operate the program, so the Guild holds back the 20%. You can see we're forecasting that the overall cost of the operation will be at $800,290, and the revenue stream is projected to generate about $580 more than what the proposed cost of operations is concerned. Some of the major funding sources for the Guild operation are presented within the narrative, where we're looking at about 42% of total revenues to support the operation come from the recreation programs themselves. I think it's about 40% of the operating program also is coming from the endowment funds that are available for the Guild. If you look on NG6, you'll see that the trust funds are providing $368,000. What we're attempting to do with the Guild is to take the major portion of the operations of the facility itself and pay for those operations through the Guild trust funds. So that's the first $368,000. We're also providing $25,000 from the fund balance of the Guild to offset costs. And the reinvested income. Reinvested income is money that's also from the endowment. It's money that came in and was available for expenditure but was not expended from trust funds in previous years. Those dollars are used to pay the debt service associated with that $1 million bond that was issued in 1996. So you can see the debt is at 55,438 as far as the revenue coming in from the reinvested income account. Also, we carry a capital budget line item of $6,500 for improvements that are necessary on a year-to-year basis. That also is paid for through the reinvested income account as a separate line item. And you can see on NG6 what each of the programs return in terms of the income generated from the fee-based system that's operated with the Guild. Terry, you want to comment on any of the specialties?
Yeah, just a note, you'll notice the decrease in the revenue in some of our programming lines. Again, as Steve had mentioned, it goes hand in hand with the expense side. Our music program has fluctuated in the past couple of years. It's dependent on the instructors that we have at our disposal to teach the programs. We have a certain number of instructors that moves up and down, and that affects the number of students. The other thing I would point out also is on the senior program with the trips. That has seen a significant decrease as well. We've offered but have not had the interest in some of these trips because of the expense. It's very difficult to run a day trip under $100, and the majority of our participants are seniors. So we've seen an impact on our trip program due to just the rising cost of gasoline, the transportation costs, the costs of Broadway show tickets, those types of things, and the impact has been a reduction in participation rate. So we've attempted to right-size those cost centers to reflect this year's participation levels going into 13-14.
Terry, you want to talk a little bit about the new skills program that's been introduced, as well as the new recreation software?
Sure. We have a program that was developed this past year, or this current year, called Skills, and it's South Kingstown, Kathy? Independent, Inclusive Life's Leisure
Sports program.
Sports program. Thank you, Steve. I had to come up with that. It is, it was developed to offer programming to special needs individuals, and it is run by Joni Stearns-Lonzak, who was, prior to this, she was part of the, what was that? The LaPlante Center. And she now runs the office programs at the Guild, trips into the community, things like bowling, crafts, cooking, to special needs individuals. It has really established itself quite well, and we anticipate that it will continue into the coming year and hope to grow that program. We also have started to implement a new software program called RecPro. We hope to be able to start that as of May 1, and it simply brings us up to date technologically with our registration and facility management capabilities within the department. The coming year, we've budgeted to purchase the module for online registration. Once that is implemented, our customers will be able to register from home. We're hoping that's a great convenience for many people. That software will also enable customers to actually see our brochure online and simply click and register from the web-based program. So we're looking forward to that. We think it will be a convenience to the town, to people out of state in the summertime when they're registering for programs. And also, it'll give us the functionality to do some reporting and statistical work to really provide some strategy going forward. Any questions?
Meg?
I have a question. I applaud you for your work, because I think you're doing a phenomenal job for the town.
Oh, it's not me, it's all the people that work for
Everybody,
that
everybody
department.
who is involved, it just deserves a big thank you. I do have a question. I know the town is working on it, but everything that I have read is that there are shortcomings with recreational facilities, recreational needs, limited space constraints, not the ability to bring on more basketball teams, if you will, or recreational teams, if you will. It's something that we struggle with. I certainly know that. And I know there is a time horizon for that to come to fruition. My question is how are we going to accommodate all of the children, the softball leagues, the older leagues this is a town that wants healthy needs environments, and so we need to concentrate on that as well, because people want that. People are asking for that. People have a need for that. So it's not something that's going to be done overnight, and certainly you've done a phenomenal job. I don't take that away at all. But what's the time horizon to accommodate the needs of all of these recreational activities?
I don't think you're ever going to solve all of the needs, because as we go forward, whenever space is available, there's going to be uses found for it. You know, several years ago, there was no lacrosse. Soccer was the only sport that you were seeing along with the basketball. You know, we're looking at the construction of the new community center, and we're looking at doing that in the, I think 15, 16 year. But what we have to balance, Meg, is can we afford the capital facility? I don't see a problem with that. But can we afford to operate that facility without jeopardizing some of the elderly in the community that are going to have trouble with the
Tax base.
increase in the
Yep.
taxes?
Yep.
So there's a fine line in terms of the balancing act that we have to have when we develop budgets, because if we were to try to meet every need that comes forward, and many of them are legitimate, we wouldn't have the resources, or we would not have the resources without increasing the tax requirements, which then may jeopardize people's abilities to be able to stay in their homes. So during bad economic times, what our objective is in the development of the budget is to try to maintain status quo, but not to increase what the tax requirements are. If we can see where there's going to be years that there's a great deal of development occurring in the community, there's going to be an expansion of the tax base that would provide us with new tax dollars from new people rather than tax dollars from existing people, then you move quickly on that. But I think when we talked about in the capital improvement program, we've identified a lot of needs, but we're not identifying any real sources of revenue other than the property tax as a means of addressing those needs. And we've got to look at across the entire tax base as to whether or not we can accomplish these things without jeopardizing those households. So, you know, if you've got good ideas, tell us what they are. We're trying our best.
Now I appreciate it. I certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Terry, the gym over at the Guild, is that being used for sports, like basketball teams, or is that too
Yes.
far gone?
No, we do utilize it. We use every inch of gym space that we can possibly get our hands on, and the Guild gym is used for some of the younger teams, the smaller youth teams to practice. We have drop-in basketball. We must have had 15 young men in there today, so it does get used. It gets used for indoor tennis lessons
Oh.
Gets used
So it's
as,
used like any gym, still. I mean, I remember years ago it was used a lot for younger kids, but,
for the most part. We don't run actual rec league games in the gym.
Yeah.
It's for practice and
good.
lessons.
Is this-
Recognize that we've also added 2 gyms over the last 15 years with the Peacedale Gym
Yep.
and the, and Broad Rock. So it's not as if we're static.
Right.
We are expanding, but I think that even if we build a new facility, we will still have needs that will go unmet because there is such a demand, particularly during the winter months, for the indoor space.
Why is that gym used mostly for the younger kids? Is there, like, is it not standard size or something?
It's not. It's very small. It has very little space on either side of the actual boundary lines. So the walls are padded for that reason.
Right.
The larger, the bigger kids tend to be more physical and may end up,
If you ever played there, it's tight.
Yeah, yeah.
it's very tight, but we make the best use of it that we can.
The elevated radiators are not really a lot of fun when you bang into them.
Jim?
Alan, the Guild Trust Fund, pretty steady over the last 5 years of revenue. I mean, is that the mix of portfolio you choose to try to at least come up with this number every year? Yet the market's new high,
Yeah,
reaching
it's
new
based
highs?
on a total return concept, Jim, so it's not just the interest. There is some principal coming back. Right now, we're at 3%. Probably have to bump that up a little bit based on the recent drop in interest rates. But there's a 5-year smoothing that we go through on that. We calculate it every year. And then what I'll do is take the number, the 368,000, figure out what that percentage needs to be so that we can make sure that we generate that income.
What kind of a mix in the portfolio now?
It's a mix of stocks, equities, equities, bonds, and, there's some cash in there. I believe the last time it was about a 60-40, 60% bonds, 40% equities.
Thank you.
What's that? Okay.
Any further questions associated with recreation? Just one comment, when we go back on the general fund budget, there's 3 parades that we fund for $2,333 for the $7,000. It's not 2, I don't know why I said 2, but there's 3 parades that go out of that program. Next budget item would be the seniors services, program, and that's got its own tab. The senior services program really is made up of 4 separate components. One is the senior transportation program, the second, the nutrition program, third is the adult day services program, and the fourth is the senior center itself. The nutrition program operates out of the senior center, but we keep those as separate programs because we do cost sharing with the town of Narragansett, so we want to identify and isolate what the costs are for the center operation and for the nutrition program, which operates the lunchtime program. So that's why those are kept as separate programs. The transportation program, we operate with 1 bus that during the most recent prior year served 225 unduplicated individuals and traveled about 22,000 miles for the year. Number of trips that have been operated are about 7,750 trips over the course of the year, and we're averaging about 298 of those trips per month. The goal of the program is to assist seniors and those with special needs with assistance in terms of dealing with daily activities, whether it's visits to the pharmacy, hair salons, banks, or retail shops. The program was expanded back in 2008 when the state stopped providing free service to the nutrition program for residents, and we had to pick up that slack. And we now also provide delivery to and from the nutrition program at the center with the senior transportation program. The center, the van is provided at no cost to the senior participants, and they can ride it with multiple times, and it's on an appointment basis. So we will go out, pick up the individual. Certainly there's runs that are made so that they would go to the business centers, the shopping centers, and also to deal with other activities. The only thing we don't provide services for are for medical appointments. Those schedules just would be impossible for us to be able to meet. But the overall program for the transportation program is about $68,754. It's up about $3,700 for the year. Principal increases there are in terms of personnel and dealing with the cost of fuel. The second program on the senior nutrition program, if you take a look at page S6, it will show you the statistics in terms of program participation at this point. And what you'll see on that page is that at the senior center, the congregate meal site that's operated there provided 11,525 meals over the course of the last year. And these figures really run from November through November, November through end of October. And what we're looking at is that we have about 180 individuals that are eating at the center on a weekly basis. At the bottom of the page S6, we show you what the distribution is as far as where our participants hail from. You can see that 71% are coming from South Kingstown and 29% coming from Narragansett. Interestingly, non-participating community meals were served to about 5,500. That's about 11, almost 12% of the meals are going to persons outside of Narragansett and South Kingstown, for multiple reasons. We may have our residents visiting Cranston or North Kingstown. We may have people that are visiting from other communities that are with members of our association. So you're going to have that type of a free flow. What we do with Narragansett is we look at the last 4 years of use within the meals program itself and come up with what that distribution is, and that's where the 7129 is. If we take the total cost that's not reimbursed in terms of other revenues and divide that by the percentage to come up with the proportionate share, we then send a request to Narragansett for that. We've sent a request for them to support the program with the $29,701 for next year. South Kingstown share would be at that $72,835. That's for us to get the $102,000 that we need to run that program. I'd also note that this doesn't include the cost of the meals. The meals comes through federal program where those meals come out of, is it Cranston that they come out of?
West Bay.
West Bay, and those meals are brought in and that are served at the center. It also, we serve as the focal center for the distribution of the Meals on Wheels program as well. I think the value of the meals was estimated at around $82,000 in meal cost that comes into this program that just comes through that West Bay grant program. Are there any questions on the nutrition?
Yes, I'm just curious how this looming sequester is going to affect Meals on Wheels and federal funding.
There's the possibility, I mean, it was in the news, I'm sure you saw,
Well, yeah,
that,
that's all.
Meals on Wheels in Rhode Island, one of the areas that could be affected is the Meals on Wheels program.
Don't know
We
what.
don't have any numbers West Bay Community Action happens to be the caterer for the senior center congregate meal site. They have noted that they may see some cuts, but we don't have any idea as to numbers at this point.
Like everybody else, kind of.
Well, at this
Unfortunately.
point, the meal value is about, you're looking at about $7.10 per meal based on what the last year was. So if we were to lose that resource, certainly we would be looking at, maximum exposure would be probably in the $80,000 range, that we would have to determine how we were going to deal with that type of a loss. Obviously, you're looking at 80,000, and you'll be looking at least 70% of that being exposure for South Kingstown. So we'll have to wait and see where that whole program goes at this point.
Thank you. Hopefully they'll figure it out.
I mean, it's not a case where I can see that they can cut back on the nutritional components of the meal that's offered at this point. It's not like there's any extravagance in that program. If
Steve.
we move on, the next program.
Steve, I just wanted to ask one question on the transportation for Narragansett. Do we transport the Narragansett residents?
No, we do not.
We do not. Do they
No,
transport?
that program is totally housed within South Kingstown.
Mhm.
I will say that we may go to a Narragansett shopping center based on requests. If they need to go to Stop and Shop, we will take them there. We're not going to tell them they have to go to Belmont.
Mhm.
But it's a case where you'll see our van out of the community, but you won't see our van picking up residents from other communities. The next program is the Adult Day Services Program, and that starts on page S8. This is another program where we're sharing not just with Narragansett, but also North Kingstown. And when you look at page S9, you'll see that the overall program cost for the 13-14 year is up almost $14,000 at $328,000. When we look at the client payments, the state client reimbursements, as well as the grants that are available here in miscellaneous revenues, we're still short $116,993. So what we're attempting to do is to reclaim that $116,993 based on the proportionality of use of where the client base is coming from. And so what we look at is the number of client days. We don't want to look at clients because we can have a client that goes once a week or once a month, and we may have another client that goes 5 times a week. So what we want to look at is the number of days that we're actually providing services for. We then take a look at the last 4 years of actual activity within the client base to come up with the number of client days per community. And what you see is that 31% is coming from South Kingstown, 37% from Narragansett, and about 32% from North Kingstown. You'll also see that there's a very large number of client days that are coming from outside of the Narragansett, South Kingstown, North Kingstown area. The program that we operate is looked at as a state program, which means that client base can come not just from our communities, but also from any outlining area. So we have clients now that are coming in from Charlestown and from Richmond that make up that 3,105 days over the last 4 years. It would be nice to get contributions from those communities. We will be requesting some type of supports, but at this point, the only 3 communities that are actively participating in reimbursement for their client days are the 3 that are noted there now: North Kingstown, Narragansett, and South Kingstown. We are also looking to increase what the rate will be for those clients that have income levels that are high enough that they're not being subsidized. The cost of this program is extremely high, and the state has capped the prices. I think our prices right now are about $95 per day per client, where the state's cap is at, was it at $58, I think?
$53.
$53. So with anybody who's on a subsidized base, we're losing dollars which would have to come through the local sources. We have suggested in strong kind with the state that adult day service programs keep people out of nursing homes. They also provide respite care for the families of persons that have the needs for these services. And they also provide opportunity for those people to work if they're not having to provide direct patient care for their loved one. Unfortunately, the state has not seen fit to increase what the reimbursement values are associated with this program. For us to be able to continue the program, it will take the 3 towns to continue to provide funding. One of the things that we've done after the expansion of the facility itself is Terry has restructured some of the program where there's been a reduction for the full-time case manager, activities director, and we've gone to a full-time activities facilitator position instead of the case manager, who's now on a part-time basis. We've also had to increase the number of hours for the activities aide from 17 and a half to 25 hours a week. And that's a reason why you're seeing some of the cost increase here. It's interesting, the state won't increase the reimbursement values, yet the state has licensing requirements for us as far as what the number of employees that we have to be able to service the client population. This is an important program, yet it is an expensive program for the communities. I know that Terry's done a lot of work as far as reviewing how we could change the rental structures, and there really are no viable ways for us to do that at this point based on the reimbursement requirements and the Medicare reimbursements that are received with the program. Terry, you want to talk on some of the things that we've seen since the programs have been expanded?
Sure. We, as you all know, we did have an expansion of the facility itself last year. With the expansion, we required more staffing. When our clients are in 2 different rooms, we have to have a certain level of staffing in order to be able to have a safe environment for our clients. We have expanded programming in that we're able now to have the original multi-purpose room become a dining and passive activity area. So we have programming that will take place with a certain functional ability level clientele, while in the larger room there are more active programs, exercise programs, physical activities that go on in the larger room. Staff does an outstanding job. I know you're aware of that. We have wonderful comments from caregivers who write letters, tell us day to day that it's a great program, and of course it is. I would also say that the fees that we charge are very affordable in comparison to some of the other daycare facilities across the state. 70% of our population currently is on copay or full Medicaid, which is why we see the need to have more local funding, because more and more the clientele is income eligible for full Medicaid, if not copay of $750 or $1150 a day. So those are some of the challenges that we're dealing with. We do have a waiting list. We have clients that we can accommodate up to 20 clients per day. On any given day, if we have 20 clients on our attendance list, we may only have 17 show up. One of our challenges is being able to keep those spaces open, even though our clients on that day may be ill, may be in rehab, but we can only hold those days for so long. That's where we're starting to see a loss of funding, on those days where we have people who are out. We understand they're frail. We want to be able to accommodate them, but it's a balancing act of being able to accommodate yet not have these absentee rates that cause our drop in reimbursement. But overall, the program is, the number of days has increased, and we do have a waiting list for certain days
Jim?
Yes, Steve, has the state budget actually dropped, or they just think Washington County is a higher premium county, therefore we can afford more?
I'm not aware of any changes in the state budget on it. It's just that the number hasn't changed. The unit cost hasn't changed. So whether they're seeing increased participation in other regions, I'm not sure. All I'm saying to you is that if they're only willing to give you the $53, that's all you're seeing. We were seeing that 3 years ago.
Yeah, I just didn't know if a Kent County was $75, Providence.
Oh, no, it's
flat.
a
Cross-board.
universal
Okay,
fee.
thank you.
And the same thing with Medicare, because
Okay.
Medicare reimbursement is also set, and that may also be something that we would see additional problems with at the federal level.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, what are the hours in a day that a client can come? Is it 8 o'clock? 5?
8:30 to 3:30,
And could they come part-time, like just half a day, or?
full day.
Full day.
Having a half-day program creates kind of a logistical issue. Most of our clients would be in need of full day. Caregivers need to work, that type of thing.
Other questions? If not, we'll move on to the senior center program itself, and that starts on S10. S11 shows you the program detail. The proposed budget is $279,246. Net of revenues coming into the program, $227,321 that needs to be generated. When we look at the program, that works out to about $95 per person or per member of the organizations. Right now, we have 1,600 active members from South Kingstown and about 793 actives from Narragansett. Technically, if we did this program on a proportionality basis, Narragansett would be responsible for approximately $75,000. That's not a realistic expectation, since Narragansett also has its own senior center. We certainly are not going to persuade people to come to our center and to stay in Narragansett. Many people that are using our facility from Narragansett have lived in South Kingstown and moved back and forth. So what we ask, though, is a contribution from Narragansett this year of the $38,000. And that request has been submitted to Narragansett along with the nutrition dollars that are requested. If you look at page S2, you'll see what Narragansett is contributing to our three programs. We're asking for $110,594, which is up $6,100 over the current year. We're also asking North Kingstown for $37,291, or about $1,846 more for their share on the adult day program. And once we get through with the state grants and reimbursements that are available, that's where South Kingstown's direct contribution comes. So we're looking at $363,000, and that's on page S1, $363,333. And that comes from the general fund. So what we do is we appropriate that $363,000 in the general fund, and we transfer it into the senior services program to be able to provide the proper funding for the four programs that are listed there. Terry, you want to talk about?
Steve?
Steve, before you go on, your definition of active again for the seniors?
A definition of active
Active.
in terms of, I don't know what you,
Oh, you said 16?
active members?
Yes.
That in the course of the past year, they've utilized in some way, shape, or form the senior center or senior services programs, whether it's through program activity, coming in for an appointment with the community information specialist, coming in for a meal. Those are active, and we register them.
Oh, okay, so you, maybe 25 is an active member of visits per year, no matter whether it's a meal, help with social security, whatever? I mean, Is
Exactly.
there a number that they fall into the active category?
I-
10 visits, 20 visits, 100 visits?
No, it doesn't matter how many visits. A person could come in once for their flu shot.
Okay, fine, okay, good, thank you.
Or 5 days a week.
Or 5 days a
Oh,
week, right.
52
Or
years,
5 days a week, yeah.
52 weeks. You want to talk about the programs that you're operating there? at the center?
Sure. A couple of the items that I'd like to point out, particularly with the senior center. We've obviously had the increase in the personnel costs and fringe benefits. On the side of actually activities and what occurs day to day at the center, we are challenged to find enough space, particularly in the morning hours when we have a high volume of traffic in the center for any number of programs that are going on a day-to-day basis. We've looked at being able to install a divider wall in our dining room area. I believe that's in our capital budget, in order to create more space. We've seen an increase in physical activity, exercise, dancing, Zumba, any kind of dance and aerobics type of activity. We notice now that we're catering to almost two separate populations. We have the 80-plus population, who probably not all, but a majority would come for the meal site or passive activities. And then we have the boomer population, which we've seen increase in terms of activities. Karen will tell you this, where we see folks coming in for enrichment programs, language classes, Zumba, and not so much for the meals, but definitely for the programming and the activities. So we're challenged in that regard to kind of cater to basically two generations at the senior center. But we're doing it with any number of partnerships with URI. We have the pharmacy, College of Pharmacy. Most recently, the kinesiology department has implemented a program within the center. The College of Gerontology, Roger Williams University also has been involved, their architectural school, with assessing the facility. South County Hospital has been generous with providing the nurse clinic weekly. We have, just make sure I don't forget anybody. And of course, the Senior Youth Association, which is really the association that began the senior center, along with, I'm sure you saw it in the paper recently, Maria Tetro, who just recently passed away at the age of 102, who was the original force behind the senior services program, not only in South Kingstown, but she was recognized around the state. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention Maria Tetro. So we have a number of partnerships throughout the community, and those partnerships enable the center to offer programs that are, for the most part, free of charge to the senior population.
So Facebook use by the seniors hasn't kept them away?
No, it hasn't, as a matter of fact, but I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because we do offer a number of technology-based programs for seniors, how to use Facebook, how to use iPhones, how to use digital cameras.
I just didn't want them hiding in homes, as long as you
No,
make
we've not
things
seen that.
accessible.
Our internet cafe affords them the opportunity to come to the center and
You have
surf the
enough
web.
computers.
We have computers, yes.
Jim, did you hear iPhone? They're going to teach you how to use it?
Yes, I know.
I don't even have that.
Terry, how old do you have to be a member?
60.
Sign up.
Uh-oh.
60. The opportunities are there. I think some people shy away from it, but the younger seniors are able to come in and volunteer. We have a number of instructors and facilitators who are themselves over 60. They come in to volunteer, but then they also may utilize our services like the Medicare D counseling. So in that respect, we get people in and they give and we give back. So it works both ways.
This may be a limitation, but do you integrate a lot of the younger kids who are like Eagle Scouts or community-based services, or people who want to get community service in the high school level, or the adolescents in the town?
We get that on a regular basis. We
Great.
have high school students,
Great.
junior high, to come in and do community service hours, scouts,
Perfect.
do the
I think
same.
that's great.
Any other questions?
Comment, just I say it's going to be an evolving thing, because the seniors that are now, I count myself one of them, we're different than what we thought of as when we were kids, as
They
a
can
senior
teach you how to
citizen.
use Facebook.
I can do all that. But I think that's gonna be a dynamic that's gonna change.
I agree. I agree. And I think one of the items that is so important too, we spoke about the community gymnasium, that is going to be a component of what seniors will want to be involved with, whether it's a fitness room, a walking track, basketball. That'll run across the generations, the need for that center.
Well, just in closing, I wanted to recognize Karen, Kathy, and Rex that are out there that really provide for the programs that we've been talking about tonight. And these aren't 40-hour-a-week jobs. Even though we only pay for 35.
Steve, the only question that I have, it's not really a question, it's maybe looking down the line in the future for some of the younger disabled population and looking at, future trends as the parents get elder and can't do the transportation anymore for the younger disabled population. And I just really would like the town to, at some point, look at that, I'm an aging mother who has a disabled child who will eventually need transportation back and forth, and just something that I think that maybe should be looked at through the town.
We'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'd like to move forward, and we'll go back to the general fund budget, page N31, which is Public Services Department, Engineering Division. Thank you, Terry.
And on behalf of the town council, before all of you wonderful people leave, we also would like to thank, Terry and Kathy and Karen and Rex. Yeah. Great appreciation and devotion for all of the work and the time that you give. We're blessed. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
I want to introduce you to our latest equipment operator who spent 20 hours on a backhoe.
EO what? 2, 3?
I think it also brought new respect within the department for the fact that he was willing to be out there for the same hours that they were during that past storm. Just in terms of the storm itself, I just want to say that at this point, we are about 73% through the budget that we have for storm management. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. More importantly, we will probably still be working as far as storm cleanup over the next several weeks, because we still have a great deal of right-of-way work to do in terms of cleanup. Once the storm was over, we ended up with several crews that worked for over a week and a half that were third-party vendors, arborists that were responsible for clearing the rights-of-way as far as any of the broken branches that were hanging into any of the town roads. Cost of that program is probably going to be about $30,000 that we spent, which was not budgeted. Hopefully, we will see some type of state and federal reimbursement on some of the emergency costs that were incurred. At this point, there's probably another 3 weeks, and hopefully we won't see more damage come before the end of this week with the storm that is forecast for Thursday. But I'm using that as a lead into just the engineering function. The first account that we look at, the engineering division, is really the technical branch. It's the administrative functions that operate within the Public Services Department. The budget is $267,476, and that's on page GF 17. And it's about $5,000 over the current year. There really isn't much change here from one year to the next. The only change is that we've taken part-time salaries from 3,200 to 0. What we're actually doing is, we had used Al Kernow, who was our prior Public Works Director before John took over, and he would do survey work for us. He's no longer available to do the survey work, so we've moved that line item down to the professional services account, where there's $2,000 that's budgeted for any of the road survey work that we have to have completed, and we'll do that through a third-party vendor rather than as an employee relationship. Outside of that, there's really very little change in the department other than the 2% salary increases that are necessary with the full-time workforce that's there. If there's no questions, we can move forward to the Streets and Highway Division, and that starts on page N32. And the Highway Division is responsible for the ongoing maintenance of all of the town roads, bridges, the drainage infrastructure, and the and dams. This is the where we would budget the money for road improvements that are on a year-in, year-out basis, not capital reconstruction dollars. If you look at the program detail, which is on GF 18, you'll see that, again, we're looking at a 2% salary increase for the full-time employees. We are not expecting additional retirement, so there's no severance requirements, where there was $22,946 budgeted in the 2012-13 year. You can see that we're looking at about a $15,000 increase in professional services line item. When we look at professional services, the first $190,000, I believe, is used for the stone seal program. That's where we do approximately, I guess, about 8 miles of road each year with a stone seal surface. And those are the secondary roads. We can't do stone sealing on the primary roads because they just won't last with the type of traffic that we have. In addition to the 190,000, we also have crack sealing that goes through there, which is about 38,000, and road striping for another 25,000. Then there's a number of miscellaneous expenses dealing with the Matunic Point steps, the town dock at Marina Park, all of the maintenance items that are there. One new item that we're looking at this year is that we're looking at the cleaning of catch basins, and instead of doing this in-house, looking at being done through a third-party vendor. We're required with Phase 2 drainage requirements and the TMDL program itself to do cleaning of catch basins. The question was, do we hire a third-party vendor to do the work, which is labor-intensive and requires a vac truck, which is worth probably about $350,000 that we would need to replace? Or do we look at doing this as a third-party service, that way freeing up some of the labor that has been used in the past? As you recall, we've reduced the workforce in the Public Services Department by 4 positions. If we can get the basins being cleaned third-party, it frees up some of the labor for us to use for other purposes that we're not finding time to get the work done during this, particularly during the summer months. This account also provides for the refuse collection, the drug and alcohol testing requirements that we have to do for CDL licenses, and the stormwater testing. So when we add all those items up, we're looking at about $385,000. If we don't spend the money there, the money is then recommended to council to transfer into the capital reserve fund for road improvements so that we can do additional road reconstruction. When we look at the seasonal snow removal program, just to give you an idea as far as the detail, about 255,000. John, have you got the numbers there on the, John, is that on? Forward, thank you, and a little bit closer to you.
In the current fiscal year, we have 228,000 budgeted, of which 50,000 is for any overtime personnel for any activities that aren't during the normal workday. Sand is about 27,000, and salt is 151,000. And one good thing is salt it really spiked about 3 or 4 years ago at about $81 a ton, and now the price of that has come down somewhat, but it's still higher than it used to be. So again, for this fiscal year, 228, and the manager indicated to date, we've spent about 72%. So we've got about 65,000, and hopefully, depending on what the weather's gonna do, we won't expend all that this year.
When you look at the narrative on page 33, there's some performance details that we're looking at as far as the basin cleaning as well as the sweeping requirements. And again, road sweeping has also become a requirement for drainage improvements, where what we're being required to do through state regulations is to be able to clean the roads, to be able to get the sand and the salt off them, so that surface water runoff does not put more pollutants into the water bodies. John, you want to talk about some of the Phase 2 stormwater mandates?
Yes, we're required, we go out and we have to inspect every single catch basin every year. We've got about 3,300. And we have to go to every outfall. We've got about 300 twice a year, spring and fall. In fact, we just went out yesterday to do the first round of inspections on the outfalls, and there are certain periods of time when the outfall inspections can occur. And then based upon the inspections that we do for the catch basins, we have to come up with what's called a predictive cleaning schedule. And what we're figuring now is, and that's we're going to hire hopefully the third-party contractor, would be to get those catch basins cleaned every year. We don't have to go to every catch basin, but again, based upon the inspections, that'll dictate which catch basins need inspection. The other big item, the council's aware, we just, did the TMDL award for the structural BMP. So, a lot of that, well, we've got public education requirements we have to do. We put ads, I don't know if everybody's seen the block Dan Bosque cartoons in the paper for stormwater. So there's a whole host of regulatory requirements that we have to go through for Phase 2 stormwater. It takes an inordinate amount of time, unfortunately. All good stuff, but it does take a lot of time.
In the current year budget, there was the purchase within this department for iPads. The iPads are used for us to be able, they geocode the exact locations of the catch basins. That they take pictures of the catch basin so that we can then be able to prove why we're cleaning them on what type of a schedule that we use. It's all part of a database that has to be provided now to be able to meet these new requirements. The use of the iPads will probably be starting, I guess, in a couple of weeks. Like any other software, it doesn't go without its kinks. The overall budget for the public services, streets and highway is $1.8 million. That's recommended, or $11,500 more than the current year.
Carol has a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, how much money are we putting aside for the third-party contract services for the catch basin cleaning?
Yes, we're showing in the current, or the proposed budget, $25,000. In the we've spoken to a number of contractors already. They feel they can get about 15 a day. So, remember, we got to take that material back to highway. It's got to be stored. It's got to be tested before we truck it up to, it gets trucked up to central landfill for zero tip, and they use it for daily cover. So there's a whole cradle to grave requirement for even getting rid of whether it's the street sweeping spoils or the catch basin cleaning.
And how many did you say there were, John? How many?
We've got about 3,300 in the system. So again, any new subdivisions now, stormwater is completely changed. All, the design and engineering that's been embraced for the last 100 years is no longer in effect. So very few subdivisions, any new ones that we see are going to have, catch basins. They're going to have swales with, infiltration capabilities. That's the new goal, is to keep any point discharges from occurring.
The capital items that are listed on GF 18 will be replacing snow blowers and chainsaws, which for the most part are year-in-year items. That's in the 400 series, where you see the construction equipment. There's also a copy machine that needs to be replaced down at the Highway Department, and we need to replace the tire changer. So those are the items that are listed there for the $17,895 that's budgeted. If there's no questions on that, we can move on to the next account, which would be the tree management program. Tree management program, we're looking really at steady state. Approximately $33,450 is the appropriation recommendation. Of that, the $7,450 is the retainer that we provide to Bill Wallace as the town's tree warden. Just to make sure council is aware on process. As the tree warden, he is responsible for doing tree work that's non-emergency in nature. So if there's a complaint, he'll go out, he'll visit the site. If there needs to be work done that's of a maintenance nature, he would take care of it. If there's emergency work that needs to be done, he'll take care of that, but we will pay for the emergency work that's done. If we have a number of trees that have had complaints where the trees need to be removed, we will bring those trees to one contract and put that out for contract so that other arborists would have the opportunity to be able to submit prices for doing that work. He would also have the opportunity to submit for the work that is outside of what he's doing under the retainer. But, I want to make sure council's aware that there's two types of work that we do here. The emergency work, where we have to have the tree warden do the immediate activity, or those activities where we can schedule it a month, 3 months in advance, and have multiple trees so that we can get best price from an arborist to come in and do the work. We also have the ability under the state's master price agreement to be able to hire arborists for hourly rates that also give us the rates for the bucket trucks that they would be using. We'll use that service more if it's efficient for us in the operation. We could budget $100,000 in this account, or we could budget $25,000. Any of the cost overruns will go out of the Streets and Highway Division with the work that we have to accomplish. If there's no questions, we'll go on to street lighting.
I just want to ask one thing about the storm recently. How do we budget for all of that tree work that we're doing? I mean, that's not coming out of the tree
No,
warden
most-
budget, I can't imagine.
Most likely, it will be reimbursed through emergency declaration that the state has put in. If it's not, and it becomes a municipal expense, it most likely would either go through Streets and Highway, or it would go as a contingency charge. You have a contingency budget for $60,000 that you could expense it through that line item as well. But what we're waiting to see is whether or not there will be reimbursement for those types of items. There's some odd situations that present themselves when you look for federal reimbursement. What they want to look at is that they'll only pay for 3 days, and you have to decide on which of the days that you had the most expenses. If those are the days that you didn't have the arborist trucks in town, then you wouldn't get reimbursement on it. So we need to be able to isolate what our costs were during the storm and be able to compute which costs are going to be submitted for reimbursement and which ones aren't. And we're still not even sure to the level of reimbursement that's possible. But if it has to go through the general fund, it'll go through one of those 3 line items, either through the tree budget itself where there is no dollars, Streets and Highway if the dollars are available, or through the contingency program.
And like you said, the work isn't done yet, right? There's still plenty of work to be done on that?
Well, the work that's going to be done in the future is going to be done using in-house labor and in-house chippers. We won't continue to use the arborists at this point, as much as the department would like to continue to use them. We're going to hold back on that. If we see that there's specialty work that needs to be done, then we'll bring them back. Street lighting. We had spent $153,630 in 11-12. We had budgeted $130,000, assuming we were going to see a major reduction in cost associated with the energy that we were buying through the state program that's run through the League of Cities and Towns. What we've seen is the price escalation on electricity, so we're not seeing that savings. What we're also looking at is that John's estimate right now, looking at the prior 12 months and looking at the actual cost for the lighting in town, and it's not just the street lights, but it's also specialty lighting, whether it's at the Peacedale parking lot, whether it's the Veterans Square at Dale Collier, whether it's any of the flashing lights at the schools. All of those are included in here. We're projecting street lights is about $152,000, and then the remainder of it would be for the specialty lightings on the different municipal properties that we're providing lighting systems for.
Steve?
John, you want to go over the activities that you went over in the last 2 years as far as changing over the light systems?
Yeah, we had the police department, they were kind enough, they went out and surveyed every single street light in town. And they we got a printout from National Grid of every street light and what the wattages for those lights were. And the police department was able to reduce, or suggested, a number of wattage reductions down to 50 watts. That's the lowest wattage we can get. And that saves us on, one, the energy costs, and all these fixtures, the municipality has to rent the fixture from National Grid. So we had twofold savings. That lamp replacement is now complete. So we believe we've got those down as low as we can. We'll still obviously evaluate if there's a 250 watt light somewhere where it could be a 75 or a 50. And we also had just recently, the police department went out at our request and surveyed all the lights to see where lights were out, because we're paying for the light, whether the lamp's out or it's not. So we've got that list. We're finalize it in spreadsheet form, and we'll be emailing that to National Grid to make sure if we're paying for the light, we're getting the service. So I think, I'm going to say we've probably done as much as we possibly can, other than eliminating lights, to try to reduce our lighting bill. I think it was Foster, I was at a meeting, I believe Foster got rid of every light in town. And I think, especially there's, a number of places where that probably just is not a good idea. So I think we've done everything we can to try to minimize the cost at this point, other than eliminating lights.
There's a number of costs that are involved with the lights, whether it's the cost associated with the rental of the light, the cost associated with the energy to light the structure, as well as the cost associated to maintain the structure. So there's a number of different costs that are regulated through PUC at this point. There should be a review that's made. Washington County Regional Planning is looking at a study that would look at getting the PUC to agree to allow municipalities in Rhode Island to own the lights. That program has worked successfully in Massachusetts and Connecticut, but it was very difficult to get it through those PUCs because the utilities were not in favor of providing that enabling authority. So we're going to have to see what we'd like to do next as far as street lighting is to look at what type of costing we've seen in Connecticut, particularly because they've been the most successful, and then determine whether or not there's steps that should be taken in Rhode Island as well through the PUC.
Steve, can I just ask about the town parking lot on Main Street and what the plans are to have that lit for lighting?
The parking lot on Main Street, the lights will be installed as a part of the building that's going to be put in. That's an add-alt, I believe, on that project. If the lights are installed, we would be responsible for the electricity uses on those, so it would just be the power cost.
So will that be happening in the spring?
At this point, I'd like to think that the job will be done this fall. My concern, Andy, are we scheduled for, what's the schedule on that right now with the intermodal?
At our recent meeting with DOT and review of that project, we're actually at 100% plans at this point, so they're anticipating it being bid out in the coming weeks. The DEM permit associated with that project expires in late October, so they're under some pressure to really get that project moving forward as quickly as possible and have it hopefully completed in late fall, as the manager just mentioned.
See, one of the key issues that we've had in slowing down that project is the fact that we would need to close the bike path for a certain period of time during construction. If we're going to close the bike path, how are we going to get people from one side of Main Street? We'd looked at a number of alternatives in terms of bringing them over to the footbridge and then coming back in. All of those create a host of difficulties because we really don't have the ability to direct them through property that belongs to the school department, and there's some safety issues as far as the fall off to the river if there wasn't proper fencing. What we're going to end up doing, and plus the right-of-way going to the cemetery doesn't belong to the state or the town, it's a private way, so we can't direct traffic through there. So it looks like what we're going to attempt to do is to put some type of fencing up and allow people to go to the footbridge during that time when we have to close the access on the bike path itself. But that project isn't going to be without its difficulties because it's not just going to be the inconvenience of the bike path access to Main Street, it's also going to be inconvenience for closure on the parking lot for certain days when we've got construction activities occurring there. DOT's done a great job in terms of the design of the project as well as the sequencing of the project, but there's going to be a number of different disturbances there that there's going to be growing pains. And in addition to that, we've got the project that's going to occur at the Wakefield Bridge that is going to take several months to be completed. I believe, John, that's scheduled to, they've awarded the contract to J.H. Lynch on that project, and it's scheduled to begin, I think, within the next month.
Yeah, I just went to the pre-construction meeting this morning. I think actually they pushed it back, which is a little unnerving. I think they're talking about starting June or they have to, and again, they're restricted by a DEM permit because they have to put staging in the river, and they can't do that until, I believe, June 1st. So they're looking to do prep work and then be in the river June 1st and be done August 30th.
Once they get done with that work, there's going to be a second job that's going to be dealing with the fish ladder. So that's also going to have disturbance within that Main Street area.
And I'm sure that that's going to have an impact on the economic development, with those two projects happening this summer.
I think NOAA and DEM Fish and Wildlife was hoping originally that DOT would be done July 1st because the dam project's got the same constraints that the bridge project does. They can only work from June 1st to October 15th. And I think if the bridge project goes to August 30th, I don't think they're going to have enough time to get the fish ladder project done.
So it maybe get pushed back to
It
next
may have to
spring.
wait a whole construction season.
You've got a number of projects, and plus High Street will be coming online probably earliest may be the fall of next year. And that would be a complete rebuild on High Street, including sidewalks.
And the intermodal facility will be shutting down that portion of the bike path this summer as well? Is that the plan, finishing in the fall?
What we have to do is we have to see, as far as the bidding, as far as the construction sequence, whether it's going to start this spring or whether it's going to start this fall. So, I mean, There's no proper time to do it because you either interfere with the summer season or you end up through the getting ready for the Christmas season. So so we're looking at that, but these are great projects, but there are going to be difficulties during, or disturbances during the time that they're actually in construction.
And I just want to clarify with the intermodal facility, that parking lot there, the town parking lot behind All That Matters, that will include the lighting?
What I said, I'm not sure that it includes the lighting other than as an add alternate at this point.
Yeah, no, it's not an add alternate. It includes the full lighting of that entire parking lot. That's an element that we were able to add at one of the final meetings, along with the improvements to the crosswalk on Main Street.
Thank
But
you.
remember one thing, is that if that project comes in over what they have available for state money, we're going to have to look at cutbacks on that project. The lights may be considered as a cutback rather than us having to pay municipal dollars on that behalf. So I won't give you guarantee that the lights will be installed as a component of the project, other than to say that we need to see what that project cost is going to be.
What's the soonest we could start, do you foresee, on the intermodal facility?
I'm sorry?
What's the earliest that you think construction would start on that? Did you say fall or spring?
I believe it would be, Andy, what was the latest that he had?
It'd be late spring. That would be the earliest.
And you think it would take right through to the fall to complete?
Yes.
And as far as the Wakefield Bridge, what will happen with that during construction? A one-lane road, or?
Nope, what they're gonna do is they're gonna shift the 2 travel lanes over towards, the River's Edge complex, and open up, so they're gonna still obviously continue to use where it's barricaded off, and then bring the Jersey barriers out 1 lane, so it's gonna be 2 lanes around. What they're planning on doing is doing prep work during the day to get, there's 1 beam that's failed, concrete reinforced beam, and demo during the day with hand jackhammers and get the rebar exposed, and then at night, the contract does allow for 1 lane, another lane closure. They think they're gonna be able to do it within their work zone, and what they'll do is they'll take the crane, grab 9-foot sections of the beam, and then torch cut the rebar and remove the beam. And then once the beam's out, they have to cast, form up for a new beam, and then once the new beam's cast, pour a new deck in that area.
So you don't see it as a great disturbance, or will it be? I mean, as
Well,
far
I
as
mean,
traffic?
that's what I conveyed today at the pre-construction meeting. I said, this is a very busy part of town.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say it's gridlock, but, I think we opened down Main Street in the summertime. And, there was talk about staging areas, and I said, I'm concerned if you need a staging area that's remote from the bridge site with, trucks or equipment going back and forth. Lynch believes that they're going to be able to stage it and work within that confined area where the bridge work is happening.
I think the biggest difficulty is going to be the loss of parking availability. There shouldn't be parking on the bridge anyway, but the parking has always been allowed on the bridge.
Right. How about a detour? Would you consider a detour, do you think, with
I
that
think
construction?
a detour would be far more disruptive. I think they can shift the lanes over and make it work for everybody. I
Yeah.
think that's the least disruptive way of getting that project done. And again, a lot of this is driven by, because of working over the river, there's a window of time where, they can't be there in the river itself. And this job, just like the Fishway job, requires working within the river. And that's restricted by the environmental permits.
One of the
June
things we're
1st
trying to
to
do,
October 15th.
One of the things we're trying to do too is to get, like on the High Street project, we've asked for them to, for DOT to come down for a public meeting to be able to explain exactly how the road improvement would be done, so that any of the businesses along High Street or any of the property owners along High Street would be able to see the plans, be able to ask questions on them, and if there were issues, we would know about them before they went out to bid. Same thing with the road project that's scheduled at Dale Collier Corner. We want them to come down for a public meeting. It'll be one of those meetings where they would set up plans around the room and have different engineers available to talk with people that had specific questions. We had a very productive meeting with the head engineer for DOT last week and went over many of these road projects. There's a great deal of road work that will be done in South Kingstown. It just depends. Many of the projects are being held up right now with DEM requirements. We're looking at 138 again being put off at this point because of the drainage issues that are still up for review. We're looking at another road project at the intersection of Saugatucket and Curtis Corner Road 108, where we've got to make sure that there's not going to be drainage issues with that project as well. So there's a number of things that are going on with DOT, and what we're trying to do is to understand what the disturbance issues will be associated with those projects and try to lessen those before they become issues.
No pain, no gain, I guess, huh?
It's easier said than done.
Meg?
No, it's just, again, a point of clarification for me, because I did get probably 4 phone calls about the High Street project. And one of the things that was culminating from the people that had called is not necessarily the resurfacing, which we need. However, they were asking if there was going to be any drainage issues that would be addressed, because they said there was some, I don't know, I don't live on High Street, and I come here for this, but, so drainage issues is what I keep hearing from people.
And you will continue to hear that because the road project that will be done for High Street can only work with what the existing drainage is that's there.
Okay,
And so they will be able to repair the existing drainage. They will be able to set proper basins on each of the intersections. But what they will not be able to do really is to expand the drainage facilities that currently exist.
I guess runoff is, I guess, the big issue, because you have so many roads that are high and they come down and they just fill into High Street, and, you know, people just said there's got to be another alternative, and I don't know what that is because that's not my forte, but.
Yeah, DOT, they did camera and investigate the lines. What they found was, I believe there were 3 utility poles right through the drainage line. And the outfall that goes down by Cemetery Lane was actually, somebody at some point actually mortared it up and blocked it. So I think that's a lot of the fundamental problem. With that being said, however, they are going to be replacing much of the drainage system with, again, the same diameter lines. If they go bigger, it triggers, again, a whole DEM review process.
Okay.
So I think you're going to see significant improvements in drainage over what's existed for the last 10 or 15 years.
But it will be no larger than
Correct.
what they started out with. And, you know, many of the complaints that we have are people that have purchased property that is the low point. And, you know, we can't prevent the water that from following the, you know, the path of least resistance. And if their yards are lower,
Sure.
that's one of the problems that we will run into. But as John said, if we can at least get efficiency to the size piping that exists now, get rid of the roots that are in those systems, get rid of the corrugated pipes that have collapsed, and put in proper piping, there'll be greater efficiency, but it will never solve the, you know, the drainage issues on High Street. All you have to do is to look at the different streets that
Oh,
are
I
draining
know.
onto High Street. How we got the name High Street for that street when it's the low point for everything coming off the hill is a bit odd. If there's no other questions, the last item within the general fund is the wastewater transfer. The wastewater enterprise fund provides for water, for the sewer system with the town. Anything that has to do with ISDS systems are systems that they're not paying into the, there's no fees being paid by people that have other than sewers in the wastewater fund. We are managing the ISDS management system or on-site management systems with an employee through the wastewater program. What this $3,000 provides is the supplies, materials, and a stipend for the services that are necessary that have nothing to do with the sewer system. So it's a budget transfer to the wastewater to offset expenses associated with things that are not sewer-related. If there's no questions, we'll move to the water fund, which is on W1. The water program's showing about a $16,500 decrease for the year. The major reason for this is that we're not having about $85,000 in expenses associated with debt service. If you recall, 5 years ago, we installed a new metering system for all of our water customers. We took it out on a 5-year bond. That 5 years has been paid. Last payment was in the 12-13 year. So for the 13-14 year, you've got $85,000 in savings. Conversely, what we did is we've held off on some of the capital improvements that are necessary within the water fund, and what we've done is to increase the capital requirements from $60,000 to $102,000. And we talked about this when the capital budget was adopted. So by picking up $42,000, you're absorbing half of the $85,000 in savings is going back into the program. And this was intentionally set up in this manner once we set up that program. And you can see this on page W6. W6 shows the expense statement for the water fund, and you'll see that you've got the $85,000 in debt service that is zeroed out for the 13-14 year, but you're seeing the capital improvements at $102,000. Just for the council's memory on this, $25,000 was for the improvements to the pump station road, which you rode on when we did the tour. $25,000 is for leak detection systems. $20,000 is for the GIS upgrades. $20,000 was the set aside for the engineering feasibility study on relocating the water line, the bypass for Matunic, and $12,000 was set aside for a tilt body trailer. That was the $102,000. We are looking at no rate increases in either the water fund or the sewer fund. The rates right now are $178 for the base rate for water use, and that gives you 5,000 cubic feet of water use a year. We also charge $77 for additional units. Additional units are where, like at Mary Carpenter's or Roy's, where you've got one main pipe that goes in and you've got a number of units that are within the development itself. Excess charge will stay at $2.97 per 100 cubic feet for the excess use. I want to give the council just a little bit of perspective, because as we say in the first page of the narrative, we are being required to go to quarterly billing. Right now, we go out with an annual billing. We'll be required to go out on quarterly billing. It's supposed to go into effect as of December 1st of 2013. I'm not sure we'll meet that schedule. With the new software that we'll be installing, we're not going to go and send out quarterly bills or annual bills and then have to restructure. What we'll look at is being able to put that new system in within probably the next 18 to 24 months. One thing I think is important is that this is going to have some billing difficulties for the town, because when you consider the fact that between the Middlebridge and South Shore water system, we have 2,757 customers in the last year. almost 62% of those customers are using less than 5,000 cubic feet of water. So when you look at that, they're paying $178. They're generating over 42% of the revenue for the program. One of the reasons they want to go to quarterly billing is to be able to really provide some type of an adverse therapy on people, where they're going to charge you more for water. So they want the minimum billing to be just, they want the minimum billing to just be for what the administrative costs are, and the cost of water to be the true cost of water. Well, in our case, the true cost of water really is the most expensive component of our system already. If we're going to just bill for the administrative overhead on a quarterly basis and then bill people just for their water use, our water rates are going to be extremely high because people are not using the water. We have to provide water availability 12 months of the year, but probably 60% of our water goes out in 3 months of the summer. So you would have high billing for 1 quarter and very little billing for the other 3 quarters. And it's something that we're going to have to hire a water engineering consultant to look at the rate structure and how we can come up with a proper fee structure that will meet what the state requirements are as far as water conservation, and at the same time look at the unique situation that we have, where we have a water system that really isn't a year-round water system, but really is used by a majority of the customer base on a seasonal basis.
Meg?
Sorry. Talking about the water, we brought this up a while ago, but we talked about the fact that there's water that's not accounted for. And how does that get distributed in terms of this? Is that flat rate that's projected out to everybody that's added to a notice of their bills, or how does that work?
Technically, yes, it would have to be, because when you look at the water that you purchase, there's probably about 23 to 24% of the water that we purchase that is not billed out. So that is a premium that has to be added on to the cost of the water that has to be recovered, because we recover all costs through the fee base itself.
Okay. Thank you.
John, how did you make out with that water leak that we found?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we found a main leak last Friday down on Prospect Road on the Causeway, if everybody's ever
Oh,
been
yeah.
down to
Yeah.
Prospect Road. The leak was probably 3 feet below sea level, and it finally, most of these leaks, when you see it, it makes its way to the top, whether it's in somebody's yard or out in the street. Because the narrowness of the causeway, and because it's good gravel, you know, I don't know how long it's been going on, so we think it's a pretty substantive leak, but we can't find something like that because, one, the piping system that was both used for Middlebridge and South Shore is non-metallic, so it has very poor transmittivity. So trying to, either through what's called correlators or acoustic methods, it's in this particular case, because we're in sea level, you know, it's very difficult to find these leaks. And what had happened was, it was what we call a transition coupling that had just rusted and the pipe separated. So we'll find out, you know, Lucian does readings once a month, and then we compare the consumption that we purchase from United versus what's sold. So hopefully when we come to 1st of April, we'll at least have a glimmer of an idea if we've, you know, reduced, at least on South Shore, quite a bit of that unaccounted for. But I think it was a pretty substantial leak.
So whose responsibility is that? Is that ours, or is that United Waters?
Nope, that's ours. It's our system. There's a wholesale meter where our connection is with United, both for South Shore and Middlebridge. So it's our responsibility. Again, in Middlebridge, we've twice had consultants in looking for leaks. The last time they found 2, we fixed them. You know, I thought maybe that would make a substantial difference, but it doesn't. I mean, just for purposes of comparison, Middlebridge, we're looking at, it's about 8 gallons a minute. So you think of what a 5-gallon Home Depot pail is, 1/2, that's how much the leak is in Middlebridge. South Shore, it's about 50 gallons a minute. So you think of all the miles of main we have in South Shore, it's probably more than 1 leak. But if you combine all the leaks, you're only talking 50 gallons a minute, but it adds up over 24 hours a day, 30
Sure.
days in a month.
Absolutely.
But that also takes into account any of the fire service use of the hydrant system as well. So
Does-
you've got the losses there as well, because the hydrant use is also part of the water that you're purchasing that you're blowing off.
But do those leaks deter from the capacity that those hydrants are able to put out?
No, I mean, it's, again, you look at 50, I mean, a hydrant probably is somewhere in the order, when it's in operation, 900 to 1,000 gallons a minute. So, I mean, 50 gallons, and again, this 50 gallons a minute, it's not one spot. It could be 10 leaks, 5 gallons per leak.
Okay.
It's truly like finding a needle in a haystack.
Sure,
It's
I'm
not
sure
going
it
to be
is.
an easy thing to solve
No, I'm
this.
sure it's probably not.
And unfortunately, most of that pipe was laid in the late 1960s.
So when you fixed the leak on, was it Prospect Street? you
Yes,
said?
Prospect Road.
Did it reduce the
Well, we won't
amount
know.
of water?
What we won't, well, I mean, obviously, we know when we
You
fixed it, the leak had stopped. But what we do is, again, we read the wholesale meter on the first day of each month, and then we read all the other customers' meters on the first day of the month. So then we can tell, hopefully, and we, we use the reading from the prior month, same period of time, and we can make a calculation as to how much we purchased versus how much we sold. And the delta is the unaccounted for water, so hopefully in South Shore, that delta will get a lot smaller. But it's going to be a very difficult challenge to try to find these leaks.
And we absorb the cost of all of those fixes, or is that
Yes.
something that
Nope.
comes from the state, or
Nope,
that's just?
that's our responsibility as a water utility.
Yes, okay.
I mean, recognize that that water system belongs to the town. That isn't part of the United Water System. The only thing they have is a contract with us where we buy water from them on a wholesale rate. So any of the structures that we have, any of the pumps that are within that system, any of the standpipes belong to the town of South Kingstown.
Okay,
With the Middlebridge system, it's the same way. Middlebridge is totally owned by the town. We purchase water through United Water for Middlebridge as well, and in fact, we wheel water through the Middlebridge system for services into Narragansett. And then it's the Narragansett water system, but United Water is providing water services for all of those different water systems, but they're independent water systems.
Jim?
thank you.
Yeah, most of the leaks always at the collar where a pipe meets a pipe, or is there some
Not-
failure in the pipes
And
themselves?
not necessarily, I mean, you think of anywhere where you have a joint, it could be when two pipes come together, could be a valve, could be a T, could be a curb stop, could be a tap for a service line onto the main. I mean, anywhere where there's a joint, you've got the potential for leaks. That's why if we have customers with long services over 100 feet, we make them put a meter pit in at the property line. And we also have them run a continuous line from the pit to the house. We don't want a joint in between, because, anywhere where there's a joint, there's a potential for leakage.
But in the street, the pipes are what, 20 feet long, 25 feet?
I think they're, what's a typical length, Lucian? 18.
So you got an awful lot of collars, awful lot of...
Lot of joints,
Wow.
lot of joints.
And with high water table, you can
Yeah.
have a leak that you're not going to see because
Oh, yeah.
the water table is so high, which you have in a good deal of the area in both Middlebridge and in South Shore. So it's difficult. We've spent dollars over the last several years, and I think what will exacerbate the problem is the fact that the cost of the purchased water has gone up. With the PUC increase in the wholesale rate that they approved for United Water, it's up, about 18.5%.
John, if you spot a leak detection, in a house, and it's a seasonal house, it's someone that's not there, what do you do about that?
Yeah, if we find a leak between the curb stop and the meter, the property owner has to replace the service in its entirety with a continuous piece of pipe from the curb stop to the house. Now, we give them the option, if they don't want to dig up the yard, they can put a meter pit, but we also tell them, you know, if you've got a leak after the meter, you own it, and you're going to pay for the water, even if it's lost water. So the property owner is responsible from they own the service from the curb stop to the house.
And what if they're only there, a month during the summer, and that you spot it in the winter, and nobody's living there? How do you if it's a seasonal home?
Yep.
Someone who just comes down for the summer, and you spot a leak detection, say in November,
Yeah,
December?
Yeah, we will send, a lot of times in the spring, when it gets warm, you'll see water coming out the garage. We shut the water off, and then we notify the property owner that we believe they've got a leak in their house.
I mean,
But
having-
since we've had the meter readings being taken on a frequent basis, what we're able to do is, if we know a house is vacant and we're seeing water use occurring there, we contact the property owner and advise them. And if it's a substantial use that appears to be going on in a closed house, they would close it at the road itself as far as shutting the water off.
So you have the residents for their winter address on file?
Yeah, the other thing that these meters have, each meter has data logging capability. So when Lucian goes out and reads them once a month, they'll give us leak alerts. And what the leak alert says is that for the preceding 24 hours, when the meter was read, if there was consumption each hour, they're assuming it's a leak, because most people aren't using, water from midnight to 6 in the morning every single hour. So typically, it's like a toilet running, or somebody left a hose bib on. So we'll get those leak alerts, and what we do is every month, we send letters to property owners advising them, it may not be anything, but you may have a leak because we got a lead alert on your meter. So it's a very technologically sophisticated meter reading system, I think probably more so than most communities have. And some people are very grateful that, because if we didn't send them the letter, they would have never known that they had a toilet flapper leaking, and they would be paying for that water, so some
What's the
people...
time horizon that you get that information? I'm just curious, I don't want to,
Yeah, we read the first business day of every month
okay, thanks.
consistently.
That's fine. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the water fund? If not, we can move on to wastewater. Wastewater starts on the WW1. The water system has, at this time, we're up to 5,556 units, and we're expecting to see that continue to grow as the number of residential and commercial land development projects continue to be constructed in town, particularly the Wakefield Meadows and South County Commons has added considerably to the volume that is treated from the community. The overall program is projected to be approximately $8,100, $8,200 less than the current year. However, this is another case where the bonds for the Middlebridge bond were paid off in the 12-13 year, so we dropped about $62,000 in debt service requirements for the wastewater system. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there'll be no rate increases. The rate system at this point for South Shore is, for the wastewater system, is $229 as a unit price per unit. And what we also are charging is any use over 10,000 cubic feet has an excess billing rate at $2.90 per 100 cubic feet. The rate base itself with South Kingstown customers will generate about $1.6 million of the overall program. The wastewater system is a regional system. When we talk about a regional system, we service the town of Narragansett and we service the University of Rhode Island. I think the easiest way of explaining and looking at the cost allocation for the wastewater system is if you look at page WW12. WW12 will provide the regional component breakdown. When we look at the general process and treatment, you'll see the percentages that are listed there. The percentages are shown where 44.84% of the materials that are processed are from Narragansett, 19.32%. And again, this is on WW12. What we do is we break out the entire system for wastewater based on the major components. Why don't we just work off of the page?
Yeah, that's fine.
What we want to do is to look at each of the different components. You can see we have general process treatment. That's at the treatment plant itself. You have sludge process and disposal, which is at the treatment plant itself. Meg, are you having trouble finding where you are on it?
No, I'm just,
No, we're good. No, we're good.
12.
I'm here.
What we have to do is we look at each of the components and what the flows are that are going through the system. So when we deal with the general treatment plant itself, you can see that the distribution is that Narragansett would pay 44.84% of the cost, South Kingstown 35.8%, and URI 19.8%. When you look at things like the Kingston pumping station, any of the flows through the Kingston pumping station are either URI or South Kingstown. So we have to isolate what the costs are so that the flows that are coming from the university are equal to almost 90% of what goes through. So anything that's an expense associated with the Kingston pump station, 90% of it is paid for through URI. And obviously Narragansett, since they have no flows going through Kingston, are going to be paying zero. South Kingstown, so we have flows that are going to differentiate at Kingston and at Silver Lake. At Silver Lake, 35% is from the university and 65% is from South Kingstown. So we have to keep all of our cost accounting by each of those major divisions. You can see with the local pumping stations and collection system and the accounting systems themselves, all of those are 100% South Kingstown. So when we look at the overall cost, the wastewater operations for South Kingstown is $1,120,000. We're showing you a total budget of $2,477,000, but it's on all cost recovery that's going to be coming from the other communities. With the capital improvements, the same distribution is done. When you look at the shares here, what we do is we break out the 5 capital projects that are being done, and we look at to whose specific benefit do they accrue. So in the case of one of the capital projects is the replacement of the generator at the Kingston Pump Station. So 89% of that capital cost will be recovered through the University of Rhode Island, and 0 would come from the town of Narragansett. So when you look at this system, yes, this looks like a very expensive program where we're spending $3.2 million overall. But of that $3.2 million, only 50% of that is really for South Kingstown costs. We also process septage, which comes into the sewer plant, and any of the revenue that comes in is distributed back to the regional partners so that it reduces what their cost of operation. So you can see by the time we get down to the regional partner share, which is the fourth line up from the bottom, Narragansett will be paying $722,000 of our costs. URI will be paying $667,000, and South Kingstown will be in at the $1.5 million. So our overall budget will be $2,921,000. That's up $88,000 from the current year, but $62,000, we're down $62,000 as far as what South Kingstown's share is. That's directly related to the debt service not being there in the 2013-14 year that was there in the 12-13 year. So there's really no other major changes that are occurring. The flow relationships are just about the same. If you go back and take a look at page WW8, page WW8 will show you what the flow shares are for each of the different communities over the last several years. So in the 12-13 year, we're looking at the Narragansett being at 43.7, South Kingstown at the 36.7, and you can see what the projections are on how we come up with that cost allocation system. And you can also see that the flows are shown there for what's going to happen at the Silver Lake pumping station and at the Kingston pumping station. We also have to do the cost allocation for our personnel program and benefits in the same manner, because if the employee is working 100% at the wastewater treatment plant, then 100% of his benefits need to be distributed based on the cost distribution that's shown on this page. So it becomes a very detailed accounting requirement that Alan has to go through at the end of the year to be able to come up with actuals, because what we bill for is the actual flows and the actual expenses, where what we budget is the projections. But Narragansett will be billed based on what the actual costs were that were incurred for those regional components that they participate in, so to the university and so to South Kingstown.
Any questions?
Just a couple of other things to point out. If you look at WW4, that shows you what the rate base is going to develop for the year. You can see you got $229 multiplied times the 5,618 customers that we expect to have. That'll generate the $1,286,000. We know that we traditionally have excess use of about 8.4 million cubic feet. So we know that at $2.90 will generate the $243,000. We also have special customers, which would be the hospital. That would generate fees of another $70,000. So we can predict the value there at the $1,599,000. John, do you want to walk through some of the trends and impacts that you have with the program this year?
Yeah, I think the best thing that we've been able to accomplish, probably for the last 20 years, is we go through our collection system every other year. I don't know if folks have seen out on the street, we have what's called a jetter, and that scours the lines and prevents any kind of blockages. I think we're probably one of the few communities in the state that isn't under an EPA consent order called a CMOM. I think that acronym stands for construction, maintenance, operation, and management, and a number of communities that have had any wastewater that doesn't make it from a property to the treatment plant is considered a bypass. So a lot of communities, because they haven't properly maintained their system, they're under an EPA consent order, and it's a very onerous process. So I think we've been able to avoid that through good proactive maintenance. So that program will continue as is. One thing that we have a new, what's called the RIPDES permit, is the Rhode Island Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. That's the DEM permit. That was just renewed, and a requirement of that was we have to now monitor continuously our residual chlorine. So that's a new expense that's up and running that is working very well. Other than that, I think, you know, wastewater is kind of steady as she goes at this point, you know, other than the capital improvements that we're working on an ongoing basis.
We're going to continue to see a lot of the capital improvements requirements because we're looking at most of our facilities. The entire system went online back in 1976. So with the pumping stations at Silver Lake and Kingston, we're at a point where many of the pumps have to be replaced and the generators that are there. So these are some of the work products that we've been working on the last couple of years. And we're going to continue to see those type of things. If you recall, with the capital improvements that we've got scheduled for 13-14, you got the generator at West Kingston, at the Kingston Pump Station. You've also got a roof replacement at the main plant, and we've got to fix the concrete walls on the intake for the wastewater system where it comes into the plant. All of those things are costly items, but after 35 years of use, they're set for replacement. One of the other things that we do with this system is we also fully expense depreciation for those components that are South Kingstown related. In the budget itself, the depreciation for the year is set at $350,000. So what we're doing is we're showing as an expense $350,000 to reflect what the depreciation value is associated with all of the components that South Kingstown has a cost share in. What that'll do is allow us to build net retained earnings, which would then be able to be used in the future for the replacement of those depreciated items, rather than having to continue to use it on a pay-as-you-go capital improvement program basis. So we're budgeting for the future in terms of being able to manage depreciation and capital equipment replacement, but it will be several more years before the number of years that we've taken full depreciation values has the net retained earnings available to be able to replace, you know, $300,000 and $400,000 items within the overall system. But that will take out the sharp ups and downs if we were going to be doing it on a capital budget basis.
Alan, was that done on a 30-year basis? The depreciation figure, how did you?
It's based on all the individual, like the life, the useful life of all the different equipment. It ranges anywhere from 10 years up to 100 years. So it's based on the cost of that and what the annual depreciation is each year. Then we have to break it down because not all of it's South Kingston, some's Narragansett and URI.
Right, okay.
And those, we're not recovering the depreciation on, that's up to them to set up the
I just didn't know if that
reserves.
was longer-term assets and they would depreciate over a period of 30 years or more, and that's.
Yeah, it's contingent on the life
Okay.
of the asset.
Thank you.
See, we were very lucky when that system was built. It was built with 90% of the money coming from the federal and the state government. Now there's $0 available for any replacements on that. So it's a whole different world in terms of dealing with being able to preserve and maintain those systems. Are there any questions on wastewater?
Just didn't know if any of the town staff here would like to add anything with their daily operations and knowledge that they bring to the table. Paula, Lucian?
If not, we can jump to the solid waste fund, which is the last program for the tonight. The solid waste program, I think you're all familiar with the transfer station. It went online back in 1983. We've had a third-party vendor that's operated it on behalf of Narragansett and South Kingstown. The current contract will take us through June 30th of 2015. Minimum state recycling rate requirements are at 35%. Our goal is to be above that during the 13-14 year. The fees for the use of the transfer station are frozen for the 13-14 year. They will stay at the $1.85 on the bag tag for residential waste, and at a $1.25 for the brush, for the other bags that are there, the bag tags for the yard waste. So at this point, I think the other thing that I want to point out to folks that are new to the process is that in addition to running the transfer station, Solid Waste Enterprise Fund also acts as as the funding agent for all costs associated with the closeout of the two Superfund sites. The Superfund sites located at Rose Hill Road landfill that was closed out, and the Kingston dump that we had regional partners with URI and Narragansett there, and regional partner only of Narragansett with Rose Hill. There's two bonds that were issued for the closeout of those two landfills. One was for $2 million, and the second one was for I think it was $950,000. Debt service on both of those goes through this program. In addition to that, we have to pay back there was a consent decree issued on the Rose Hill closeout. With the Rose Hill Superfund site, the consent decree required the town first to contribute $2 million toward the cost incurred by the federal government, and secondly, to pay back that the cost that the state of Rhode Island had incurred on a 30% basis, 15% South Kingstown, 15% Narragansett, over a 28-year period. So we're paying debt service on the two bonds that we issued, and we're paying for the direct cost of reimbursing the state. The state could have required, when we negotiated that consent decree, could have required us to pay the money up front. Instead, they allowed us to pay it over the 28 years with no interest. So it was much better than us having a second bond that would have been issued there to pay for the cost on that facility. But all of those costs, approximately $275,000 a year, are run through the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. We still have monies available to offset costs associated with Superfund closeouts. When those funds run out, which will be probably within the next several years, we would then have to put property taxes as an assistance to be able to continue to pay off those bonds. There's $1 million in the general fund that's been set aside of unassigned fund balance that'll be used in the future to pay for Superfund associated costs, whether it's the debt service, or whether it's the state reimbursement, or any of the maintenance costs associated with that, with those closeouts. Those projects were very, very expensive programs. In fact, costs to date are in excess of $25 million that was finally spent at Rose Hill, and I believe the cost was about $1.5 million, $2 million in Kingston. So we will be paying on those for many years in the future to come, in addition to the operation of the transfer station. At this point, no tax dollars go into any of the utility funds, whether it's water, wastewater, or solid waste. Everything is on a user fee basis that we're recovering costs, or we're getting third-party revenues from another source. One of the things that we also point out in the solid waste narrative on page SW2 is that we are receiving revenues on a yearly basis from resource recovery for the amount of recycled materials that we provide to them. During 2012, we got a check for $55,000. That money can only be used for enhancing the transfer station program for recycling purposes. So those monies are set aside within the reserve for that purpose. That worked out to about over $21 per ton for revenue reimbursement. So it certainly pays and behooves us to continue with the program to enhance recycling efforts within the community. We're only spending about $27,000 a year. That's directly for the part-time recycling coordinator and the programs that she administers for us. We still are having difficulties with the vendors that pick up residential waste that refuse to provide viable service for recycling and are allowing their customers to commingle household waste with the recycled materials that should be separated, and we're continuing to work on that. I think we've provided briefings to the council for this over the last couple of months. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to address them with solid waste on the enterprise fund. Again, there's
Steve.
depreciation taken on this site as well, as with the water fund or the sewer fund.
The, as far as the expenses associated with the closeout of the Rose Hill and Plains Road Superfund, will they ever be done with the expenses? Or will it require constant testing and?
If I was an optimist, I would say it would be done after we pay the debt service off and the states. As a pessimist or a realist, I would say that there will be continuation of testing probably for the next 40 or 50 years.
Wow.
There'll also be site maintenance that'll be required over the next 40 or 50 years, just to ensure that there's no problems as far as out-migration of any of the pollutants that were on either of those two sites. I think the cost will minimize after we get done with the debt service, but I think there'll still be costs. There's always an opportunity under the Superfund program for EPA to demand additional remedial actions to be taken. So again, a lot of it depends on what the results of our tests are, whether we see reductions in the methane levels that are coming off of the Rose Hill site. All of these are going to change as we go into the future. Have we seen reductions in the methane levels, John, over the last year?
Yeah, back in 2010, originally it was designed as a passive system where it would just vent passively, and they were still getting off-site migration horizontally of gas. So if the council may be aware that EPA and DEM installed a vacuum pump on the northeast corner of the landfill and a flare. So that's been running actually very well since February 2010. And but there's the landfill is still generating methane. So, and it probably will for a number of years. I think the bigger concern is what's called the contaminants of concern, the COCs that are in the gas. That's why they're burning them. That, I think what we're hoping is at least those will dissipate over time. But I think methane is, generation's still going to be for quite a few years.
And when we look at it, that landfill started operation at Rose Hill probably in the late 1960s. The Plains Road site probably goes back to the late 40s, where it began operation. So those sites are certainly sites that were not regulated, and a great deal of materials could have gone in there that did create problems. The closeouts were first-class closeouts, so we believe that the closeouts will prevent percolation of surface waters or rainwaters in that then would percolate through the filled materials. But once you cover a landfill, what you're also doing is you're preventing the methane gas, which is naturally occurring with the decaying of the materials that are on site, from being able to vent. So now what we have to do is to collect that material and either through a passive system or, as John said, with an active flare. And the active flare will have to be active until there's not sufficient methane to be able to ignite and to stay lit. So that's a long answer, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a long
It's a good
time
answer.
in terms of expenses for the communities. But again, it's important to note here that Narragansett has never walked away from any of their responsibilities as a co-sharer on the facilities. And URI, maybe reluctantly, but URI was also a active participant with the Plains Road site. So, the partnerships that we've forged over the years have been effective and are minimizing some of our costs. If there's no other questions, that completes what we needed to go over this evening.
Any further questions here at the table? Well, again, I want to thank Stephen Allen and John and Lucian and Paul Ferrande and Colleen. And I was remiss yesterday to thank Dale Holburton. And I also want to thank Sue Flynn. And I also want to thank Andy Nada, as well as all the people that were here earlier, Terry Murphy, Rex Eberly, Kathy Lallam, and Kieran Ryan. It's been a rich dialogue with the disbursement of information based on recreation facilities and programs and the historic buildings that we have in town with our Public Works Administration, water, wastewater, and solid waste. So our appreciation for the expertise and the knowledge to keep all of the town pieces working together.
Miss Colleen.
No, I said Colleen. Yeah, I did say Colleen. So thank you to all. Meeting adjourned.
But when I was at URI, the dump down there, the thing was on fire.
I do want to correct one thing that I said last night.
It was always with
The
the-
paper